Hi there. Thanks so much for tuning into the Trade Setup. I'm Neeraj Shah. Good morning. And let's see, it promises to be a volatile day of trade. Yesterday was a bit of volatility because of FNO expiry. Today, ahead of the Jackson Hole Symposium, I don't expect anything less. Now, first, the global news and some updates around trade, around business, around Fed as well. So one, the Nasdaq, the Chinese stocks listed in the US, which were up for the last 5 sessions, if I'm not wrong, have retreated for the first time. Yes, first time in 5 days. So the Golden Dragon China index, which is essentially the index of the Chinese stocks. The Fed officials will participate in the Jackson Hole Economic Policy Symposium, and Jerome Powell's speech will be today. So that's why today is important. Ahead of that, though, three Fed policy hawks have pushed for an early taper, despite the risk from the Delta variant, and that is interesting. Now, none of these three people have any say in the policy, and therefore it won't matter. But they are Fed officials, and therefore it just shows what a lot of those Fed people are thinking. Now, whether or not Jerome Powell assuages concerns uh, around the taper, or whether he says that you'll be data dependent, or does he say that yes, there is every probability that this will happen sometime in September, October, November. I think all of that will be critical. Now, yesterday, BofA Securities, for example, said that they expect that it will start from November, and that's why they believe the Nifty too has a chance of correcting towards 15,000. Keep all of this at the back of your mind. By the way, something that should interest all auto buffs is the fact that chip prices have been raised. This is the largest Taiwanese largest semiconductor company, which has hiked chip prices by up to 20% amidst the supply shortage. And that should impact everything which uses semiconductors, of course, but the point being autos too, because I think there is an issue out there for the auto companies, and as a result of which production is hampered. But now even the cost of the equipment would probably inch up a little bit. So keep all of this at the back of your mind. What did the US markets do? They retreated a little bit, though I think the futures are still marginally in the green, but S&P 500 came off about 0.5% or 0.6% in trade yesterday. So the world markets have a tinge of red overnight, at least in the US. And frankly, if you look at what's happening in Asia as well, you will see a tinge of red. So there is a bit of red on the screen. Each of these will come up, like I said. So Nasdaq Composite down about 100 odd points. So there's a bit of red there. Asia would have a bit of red, and the SGX Nifty would have a bit of red as well. I would reckon that, I'd be really surprised if the SGX Nifty has a start in the green in the session today. And okay, it does, but let's wait and watch. I'll be surprised if this really lasts in a strong fashion. My larger bet is something that I said yesterday as well, that it is very unlikely that the markets will make a meaningful, decisive move upwards or downwards ahead of what Jerome Powell has to say. Somehow, each of his speeches and appearances here on will become increasingly more and more important as we come closer to what market believes is the scheduled start for the taper. But let's not preempt. I think what Jerome Powell says today would be very, very critical. So keep all of this at the back of your mind. I think yesterday the market showed its hand as well in some fashion. So the market breadth was even Stevens, but with slight bias towards the decliners. And a bunch of stocks came off in trade yesterday. Some of the heavy duty movers in the last few days, the likes of Linde India, etc., came off too. Then Bharti Airtel, which corrected very, very viciously in trade yesterday. Some of the metal stocks have now just come off very, very rapidly in the last few days. So all of those remain in focus. So keep these stocks at the back of keep all of these at the back of your mind. So the trade setup for today, I believe it's a quiet day of trade expected ahead of the FOMC decision. Nothing untoward that way anticipated. There are select moves in metals which are not ruled out. I think I saw the US steel prices which have inched up, even if lumber prices have come off. So that is interesting. And the new FNO entrants might have some bit of a move as well. There are 10 new entrants, by the way. We'll get to that in a moment. And from whatever little I gathered from dealers, and none of these are FI dealers, by the way. I've spoken to dealers who are local dealers who cater to local mutual funds and HNIs and PMSs. And they said that they are still positioned on the long side on banking as well as Nifty IT. Nifty IT as a whole, there's an unequivocal positive bias towards that space. But in banking too, private banks, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, etc., are seeing some select bias. So keep an eye out for some of these, heavy duty as they may be. And if the Nifty were to correct, then all of these will definitely correct. But for now, dealers are saying that they are slightly positioned towards the long side on those. What are the stocks that will react? I don't have a very exhaustive list today. In fact, nothing very, very compelling. All of it research based. So, people are talking about how two-wheelers might have some bit of an issue. People are talking about how IT, for example, might have some bit of a long side. But all of that is research based, positional based. For the day today, some stocks that should be in focus, the new F&O entrants, as I said, 10 names coming in. We also have given you the lot sizes, not that it matters really, but yeah, interesting names out there. Dixon now part of the F&O list. HAL, which has had a really good run the last few days, part of the F&O list. There is MCX, which is an IEX2 exchanges, which are very interesting. And Syngene could be very, very interesting as well, since so many people believe that it's a long-term play. So also for a polycab. It's not very liquid names, by the way, these. So need to be careful, but there's some it's an interesting mix of names and should be interesting to watch out for in the session today and in the next few days. So first day of the new series 2, by the way. Some of the stocks in news, I usually don't quite like stocks which move up and down in circuits. So I usually don't speak about Vakrangi ever, no matter what the news is. But this time around, I'm making an exception. They've partnered with PNB to provide banking services. But please do your due diligence. I remember 4 years ago when we started the BloombergQuint lives, Vakrangi was a very hot stock. And there was always this editorial debate that should we give so much of airtime to Vakrangi, wherein you don't quite know what it will do. And from that point, the stock really had a series of lower circuits. I'm very careful about Vakrangi, anything about Vakrangi. I'm not blaming the management or the corporate governance one way or the other. That is for market participants to do. But please be careful if you're trading Vakrangi. Hindustan Copper, they've authorized the board to issue 10.48% of the paid-up capital via QIP, so this could be interesting. BHEL has signed an MOU for joint production of Russian origin equipment being used on certain carriers in India, so this could be interesting. They're doing a bunch of these things, by the way, BHEL, so it could be interesting. And by the way, BHEL, NBCC, some of the stocks could be in focus because one of the newspapers is saying that the government is preparing a plan to hive off the land bearing the land that PSUs have for divestment. So therefore, all of these companies could be in focus today. There's an interesting note by Credit Suisse on Bandhan Bank. Off late, it's come under a lot of fire, Bandhan, from houses like Ambit, etc., saying that there's a lot of pressure out there from MFIs. And I think what happened to gold loan companies exaggerated those fears. Credit Suisse retains the outperform rating with the target price of 370. They're saying that the MFI uncertainty weighs, but the strong core profitability and the attractive valuations are the reasons why they have the outperform rating, and that the fact that the bank remains well capitalized because of all of the numbers that they've mentioned out here. And even as credit costs remain elevated, ROEs still remain healthy for Bandhan and trades at about 1.7 times FY20 price to book. For a franchise which has got an ROE of northwards of 20%, just to make you understand, very few financial names have ROEs northwards of 20. Very few. Ginke 5, 7. I don't think even those many, but just that. But I must also warn you in the same breath that 3 years ago or 4 years ago, if you go on to BloombergQuint, there was this program called Alpha Ideas 2020, wherein there is a fund manager who had made a case for Edelweiss, rightly so, and back then, made a case for Edelweiss, saying it was one of the few entities, 4 entities, which had got an ROE of northwards of 20%. Edelweiss was at 250 then. The rest, as they say, is history. So an ROE of over 20% doesn't guarantee stock price performance, but it's a good measure of what the bank or the financial entity is doing. Bandhan Bank, at least on that front, seems to be doing okay. But there are pressures at hand, by the way. Like I said, despite all of these reasons, Ambit believes that the pricing would be well lower. So pick and choose. Some trading tweaks, some stocks moving to the short-term ASM framework, including Linde India, which was quite in the news the last few days because of the green hydrogen and all of that stuff. Yesterday was down 7%. Well, now moves into short-term ASM, so will be under a bit of a check, the price movement. Stylum, on the other hand, well, a trader favorite stock of late had moved into the ASM framework, now moves out of it. So it could be interesting to watch out for, as per the SVP Global Ventures, by the way. And some insider trades that we picked up from the, and most of these promoters have bought in from the open market in the last few days. So be it Apollo Tires, be it Elecon Engineering, General Stainless, Hisar, or NRB Bearings. In all of these, in the last few days, post August 20, I think, right? For all of these post August 20, there has been some bit of buying that promoters have done. Fairly small quantities, if you will. I mean, General Standard has a 1.5 lakh shares is practically nothing. But there has been some bit of promoter buying happening. Now, unfortunately, and I think most of these are not inter-se promoter transfers. One or two of them could be, but just keep in mind. I think there's also this GTR company which also reported this promoter buying. So these 4 or 5 names should be interesting to watch out for. Net, don't be a braveheart and try and go leverage fishing today, simply because the Fed outlook might change the outlook for the market in a meaningful way if indeed Jerome Powell does speak about taper. And by the way, on Monday morning, trade setup, we'll get in a global expert to just try and ascertain what does this mean. Whatever he says, what does it mean? So rest assured, we'll be here to try and tell you all that we can. But yeah, just from a trading perspective, since you will carry your positions over the weekend, but the US market moves will happen only post our markets close. And Jerome Powell's speech arguably will happen post our markets close. You might want to be a bit careful with leverage positions at least. Just keep that at the back of your mind. Thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup today. Have a safe day ahead. If you're stepping out for work, please stay master.